Hey guys, we're here in Muttal, Germany at the Riese Müller factory, and we're checking out the new Superdelite GT Rohloff high speed. Really excited to be sharing this bike with you because it's been highly anticipated and there's a lot of great upgrades for this year. So one of the things might be really evident when you first look at this bike is these integrated batteries. That's probably one of the more notable things of this new Superdelite. Some other details are this new Bosch Generation 4 motor system. You can tell it's the Bosch Generation 4 because it has this larger chainring. That changed from the smaller chainring that they previously used on the Generation 2 system. With this new system, there's also more torque, so there's a lot of exciting things going on with this bike. Historically, the Delite has been one of our more popular bikes, so I anticipate that the Superdelite as well as the Delite will be really popular as well. The Delite is really the type of bike that somebody gets if they want really long range, they want comfort, they want the best components they can get, and overall just a really solid bike. Another detail that makes the Delite really special is this rear rack. Generally speaking, when you have a rear rack on a full suspension bike, it's not suspended. But that's unique about the Riese Müller is that the rack is suspended with the rest of the bike. So any contents you put on here is going to have the benefits of the suspension. So the Delite is really one of the top models in Riese Müller's lineup that uses what's called control technology. That's their term. And their concept of control technology is using suspension along with some other elements to help you to control the bike better. The idea is that a standard hardtail bike, when you hit bumps in the road and that sort of thing, the wheel effectively goes off the road. But with suspension, the wheel stays planted. And if you think about it, automobile or motorcycle, they all use suspension. And it would be kind of weird to drive a car without suspension. It would probably be unsafe. So that's a lot of the inspiration behind this concept and design, where full suspension bikes are not necessarily just for riding off-road. They actually work really well in riding on-road, particularly in cities and that sort of thing, because sometimes you can have an unexpected need to stop, and having that suspension, having your wheel planted, can really increase your safety. Beyond the safety factor, it's also really comfortable. So the Superdelite, along with the Delite, has a rear shock. The standard suspension travel is 100 millimeters. Now, if you did opt for the GX version, you'd go up to 140 millimeters of travel. And there is another suspension upgrade available where you can get Fox suspension, which offers a higher level of adjustability. But really, the standard suspension works quite well for most people's uses, so it's something you could consider. And for the front suspension, it's really the same thing. So you have this Suntour Ion fork, and it's 100 millimeters of travel on the standard suspension and 140 for the GX version. I should mention that these suspension components are specifically tuned for Riese Müller and their bikes because they do have very specific geometry to them, and the weight of the bikes is a little bit different than you might find on a normal non-electric bike. So it's important to consider that they're really designed to perform really well for these bikes specifically. To see the suspension in action, if it basically compressed the rear, you can see that this compressing, and the shock is basically adjusted based on your body weight. You can change the amount of air pressure. Now, another change for this year is we've also added the rear lockout for the shock, which was something that was not available on previous years. This Superdelite is set up with the Rohloff E-14 rear hub, but it's also available in the Touring, as in the standard derailleur and chain, or the Vario version, which comes with the Enviolo CVT system. The Rohloff really is the top trim level, if you will. It has the widest range of gears. It's 526% gear range, so you have a very low gear as well as a very high gear. This pairs really well with the high-speed version because you're able to climb very large hills even with that higher speed motor. You'll also notice the belt on here, similar to previous year's Delite, where we have the Gates carbon belt drive. Now, I will note that this is a new belt made specifically for Riese Müller because it's a little bit longer They needed to use a longer belt for the larger chainring in the front and the motor, as well as the full suspension, which they run through a pulley. So the Superdelite, along with the Delite, has the new Bosch Generation 4 motor system. This specifically is the performance line speed setup, which the really exciting thing about the new speed motor is it has the same torque as the previous CX motor. So it's 75 Newton meters. Previously, you had to kind of make a decision if you wanted high torque or high speed. Now you can get high speed with high torque, which I anticipate in the States to be probably one of the more popular options. Another major change with the Generation 4 motor system is this larger chainring. Basically, they did away with what was this internal reduction gear system that they had used previously, where when you turn the crank arm, you'd get 2.5 revolutions of the chainring. Now this is more of a one-to-one relationship, which enabled them to save about 20% of the weight, as well as making the size much smaller of the motor. I mean, on this side, you can hardly even see the motor. We'll see from the other side in just a moment. Overall, the new motor is much smaller and much more integrated into the frame. From a distance, it really just hides into the design of the frame, which I think they did a great job with. The Bosch motor system uses a technology called pedal assist, and it uses 3 sensors. One sensor senses how fast your pedals are moving, as in your cadence. One senses how hard you're pedaling, as in your torque. And then there's one additional sensor in the rear of the bike, which is your speed sensor, and it measures how fast the wheel is going. Bosch utilizes this data, and they take 1,000 senses per second. They process the data with the microprocessor inside the motor, and they provide assistance proportionate to your input. So the Superdelite is available with 3 different display options. This is the base version, which is the Intuvia display. It's also available with the kiosk display, as well as a new display for the US called the Smart Hub. And the Smart Hub uses your cell phone as a display, but it also has a backup if you didn't want to use your phone at some time. Now I should note that the Smart Hub display is not available at this time with the Rohloff or the Rohloff High Speed, so it's something to consider. To turn the display on, we're going to hit the power button here. It takes just a couple seconds, but the basic information that you're going to get is the battery level here, and this is going to take the average of the 2 batteries. We'll have the miles per hour. This is something to note. If you ever don't see the miles per hour showing up on your display, it's probably not fixed properly on because it means that it's not connecting. Some other details, you have the assist level. Currently it's off, and you can go up to the different assist levels here. On the right-hand side, you can't see it at the moment, but there's 10 different ticks, which will show you how much assistance you're getting at any time. And then you have, on the Rohloff specifically, is the gears. Now this will only show up on the Rohloff and Rohloff High Speed version. The normal touring version or the Vario, you won't have this separate display. But if you wanted to cycle through these details, you can just hit the I button on the bottom. We have the trip distance, hit the I button again, clock, max speed, average speed, trip time. This shows the 2 different batteries and the battery life. We have 4 bars on the one battery and 3 on the other. We go through again. Now we're in range. This is a mode which is kind of nice if you want to see how much distance you have left in your battery. To change the assist levels, we just hit the plus button. So the first level of assistance is 60%. So basically the idea is that you take 1 pedal revolution and the bike's going to do about 0.6 pedal revolutions on top of that. I should also note that the power curve, specifically on the speed motor, is a little bit different this year, where when you actually pass the 32 kilometer or 20 mile an hour mark, you actually get more assistance. So it makes it a little easier to get up to that 28 mile an hour top speed. For the brakes, we have the Magura Mt5 up front and the Mt4 in the rear. Now these are the e-bike specific brakes, and they do have the electronic switch for the brake lights. So if we just kind of pull the lever a little bit, you can actually activate the brake light by not depressing the brake, and when we pull a little bit further, you can actuate the brake. So these are hydraulic disc brakes and they're really powerful. For the front calipers, we have the Magura Mt5 quad piston brakes, and it's set up with 180mm rotors, which are front and rear. In the rear, we have a MT4, which is a dual piston brake. And you could see some of the other setup, which is the Suntour Q-Lock. It's a setup with a Suntour Ion fork, which this year they've chosen to remove all the decals, which I think looks really nice. And overall, it's a really solid fork. If we go over to the right side of the bars, you can see these really nice ergonomic grips. So these are the Ergon GP1 grips, and this is the Rohloff shifter. So this is E-14 shifter. To change the gears, we hit the plus button to go up and the minus button to go down. Now you can shift the gears individually, but you can also shift them just by holding this, and it will shift 3 at a time. So you can move up and down in really rapid fire. Now I should note that the roll-off system, you do have to let off your pedaling a little bit to allow the gear to engage. I've found that if you shift the gears right before you're at the top of your pedal stroke, that's the point where you have the least power in your stroke, and it will allow the gears to engage very quickly. We also have the high beam for the lights, which comes standard on all of the lights. So just hit the high beam, low beam. Well, one of the things that's standard on all the high-speed bikes is the mirror, and this mirror is pretty cool. We can also add it to 9 high-speed bikes as well, but this comes standard here. And they also have a horn. One other detail I should note is these water bottles, which are removable. So these are fabric water bottles. They use these little nubs here that we can just kind of slide the bottle on, and you have one on either side. Now, there's also an optional front rack for all Delite models, as well as some of the other models like the Supercharger. And I think that's a really nice upgrade if you want some of that extra cargo carrying capacity. For the tires, all the bikes are actually going to be what's considered the GT version, coming standard with the Supermoto X 27.5 by 2.4. But all the bikes will also have the option for the GX version, which has the Rock Razor tires. Now this is an interesting departure. From our experience, most people generally want the Supermoto X, and historically some of the models would come standard with the GX version. We just swapped the tires. So now people will just have the option just to get the GT version for standard. If they are riding more specifically in off-road terrain, they might want to opt to stick with the GX version, which does make some other changes as well. I should note, if you opt for the GX version, that will also change your suspension travel, which adds 140mm suspension travel front and rear, as well as a dropper seat post. So there is some cost associated with it, but that is a nice upgrade and something you might want to consider if you're riding more off-road. Riese Müller did a really great job with this new frame, integrating the dual Powertube batteries from Bosch. So these are 500 watt-hour batteries. It's a 36 volt, 13.4 amp hours. You end up with 1,000 watt-hours of power, which will give you about 50 miles of range in the high levels of assistance and over 100 miles of range in the lower levels of assistance. So you could really go a great distance. They did these really nice covers on the batteries, and these are attached to the battery, so when you remove the battery, that comes off with it. And to charge the battery, you can charge the battery on the bike right down here, or you can also charge the batteries individually off the bike through that same style port. To unlock the battery, we use this key here. This is an ABIS Plus key, which will work with any ABIS Plus lock. So if you wanted to get other locks with this same key, you can do that. Now this does come with this ABIS Bordeaux alarm lock, and you can also do a chain or a U-lock or that sort of thing, which we can order them from Germany with the same key. Really nice option. So to remove the battery, we're just going to stick the key in here, turn it, and it doesn't remove all the way just yet. There's actually a little bit of a lever. Now I'll just lift this up here so you can see it, but it's actually depressing this here, but you can just push your thumb in here and pull the battery out. And that's how it goes. So you see it has this nice rubber cover on it, and it just fits in there really nicely. I was made aware that Riese Müller does also plan to have available a dummy setup. So when you're transporting the bike on your car, or perhaps you didn't want to use both the batteries, you can put a dummy setup in here that will have the same style cover on it, but without the added weight of that extra battery. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video of the Superdelite. I'm really excited to get this one in the shop, as I think it's going to be really popular. Historically, the Delite's always been a really popular bike, and with these new upgrades, I'm sure it's going to be really amazing. If you want to check out some other videos, just stay tuned, or if you want to subscribe, or let us know what you think. You know, drop a comment below, or just reach out to us. You can call, email, or just visit one of our shops. We have a store in Long Beach, California, as well as Brooklyn, New York. And we'll definitely have these bikes in the shops available to test out if you ever want to come by. Look forward to seeing you in some more videos in the future. All right, take care.